At the wrap party, everyone started coaxing Winnifred Clarke and Zachary Smith to kiss like they did in the show. The two of them exchanged a knowing smile. The next second, they were glued to each other. Amidst the excited cheers, someone suddenly shouted, "Let's have the second male lead and the female lead kiss too." Winnifred Clarke's eyes immediately darkened. The second male lead is me. And I am Winnifred Clarke's official boyfriend. Ding! StoryShots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. The room quieted down due to Winnifred Clarke's cold stare. It was a bit awkward. Zachary Smith hurriedly pulled Winnifred Clarke's hand. "Come on, guys, stop it. I'll kiss Winnifred again for you, but don't force her to do something she doesn't like." Something she doesn't like? I wondered who it was that clung to me for 10 minutes last night after drinking too much. I put down my wine glass and stood up, walking towards Winnifred Clarke. "What's the big deal about a kiss?" I smiled. "It's not a big deal, just cooperate a little, Ms. Clarke." Winnifred Clarke frowned slightly. "Harold Joan." It was a warning tone. Harold, Zachary Smith also reached out to shield Winnifred Clarke. "Everyone's just joking, don't take it seriously." Looking down, Winnifred Clarke's hand was conveniently placed on his waist. The two of them tightly embraced, really inseparable. "Get out of the way," I said calmly. Zachary Smith was stunned and turned to look at Winnifred Clarke. Winnifred Clarke's face grew darker. "Harold, stop it," she said in a low voice. Zachary Smith tugged at her. "Harold must be drunk. It's the wrap party, don't get angry," she coquettishly murmured, and in return, gently held his hand. How intimate indeed. I raised my head and looked at the woman in Zachary Smith's arms. Just like in the show, I was the villainous supporting character. And she loved the male lead unwaveringly. Even though I was her boyfriend, I never received her acknowledgement in public. "Get lost." I endured the disgust and repeated. "This time, both of you, get lost together." Of course, the main characters wouldn't leave. Under everyone's gaze, I slammed the door and walked out. While drinking alone on the hotel's rooftop, a text from Winnifred Clarke came in. "Come back and apologize to Zachary Smith. Just say you drank too much." Ha! I blocked her number without hesitation. As the light drizzle began, I lifted my head. I couldn't help but think about these past 4 years with Winnifred Clarke. For years, I accompanied her, from a top-tier star to a celebrated actress. Back then, as a popular star, she acted in a small web drama that unexpectedly became a hit. The company arranged for her and the male lead Zachary Smith to create a ship. And she couldn't refuse. She was quite miserable at first, always holding me and saying, "I really don't want to ship with him. I can only think of him as you to smile." She said, "Harold, wait for me. When I become a big star and no longer controlled by others, I will tell the whole world that I love you." At that time, we would dream about the future together. A dog, 2 kids, 3 meals a day, and 4 seasons of love. When did it start to change? She responded less and less to my calls. But her eyes grew gentler when looking at Zachary Smith. They had been shipping for 4 years, never acknowledging it, yet always ambiguous. In public, he would tie her shoelaces on set, take time to bike her into the mountains. In private, she fought defamation lawsuits for him with lawyers. Took him to dinners with famous directors. Fans called them the details couple, always finding sweet moments in their interactions. Some things, perhaps through acting, had long become real. But I was trapped in this situation, foolishly unaware. When Frank, my manager, called, I was already tipsy. "Harold, where are you?" I mumbled in a daze. "Something happened, you're trending." Trending? Half awake from the alcohol, I turned on my phone. It turns out someone had uploaded the video from the wrap party online. The top 4 trending topics were all about Winnifred Clarke and Zachary Smith. Hashtag Winnifred Clarke Zachary Smith eye contact hashtag. Hashtag Winnifred Clarke Zachary Smith wrap party kiss hashtag. Hashtag when will Winnifred Clarke Zachary Smith go public hashtag. Hashtag how much would you gift if Winnifred Clarke Zachary Smith get married hashtag. Starting from the 5th spot, it was all about me. Hashtag Harold Joan clown hashtag. Hashtag Harold Joan bullying Zachary Smith at wrap party hashtag. Hashtag Harold Joan joining cast with backers hashtag. All the comments under these topics were scolding me. What a joke, have some shame. With that foul mouth, you still want to kiss our Winnifred Clarke. So disgusting. Did anyone spray air freshener after he left? He's so full of himself, even slammed the door on his way out. Who gave him the guts? Someone should check his backers, trash. Ah, I'm so mad. Just because he has backers, he thinks he can bully our Zachary? I usually don't judge actors by their characters, except for Harold Jones. He's just playing himself. No acting skills in joining the cast with backers. I heard the second male lead role was arranged for him. No wonder he's playing the villain so well. Arranged, huh? Yeah, it was arranged. Originally, I secured the lead role through my own efforts. But before joining the cast, Winnifred Clarke's company pressured the producers to replace me with Zachary Smith. They said Zachary and Winnifred had better chemistry, and the show would be more popular. Winnifred also came to me, saying that if she played my love interest, she couldn't control herself and would reveal our relationship. I disagreed and had a huge fight with Winnifred. My contract with this company is almost up, Harold, can't you understand my situation? She said I wasn't considerate of her. But she didn't understand how hard I worked to get this role. Even the director initially disagreed. She chatted with me, promising to stick to her choice. But the next day, she was fired. I was then assigned the second male lead, the villain. That night, I watched Winnifred Clarke and Zachary Smith promote their new show together, chewing on bread. I heard the longer you chew bread, the sweeter it gets. But all I tasted was bitterness. Sometimes, people need to see or hear things for themselves to give up hope. Back then, I still harbored a glimmer of hope. Once her contract expired, without any constraints, we could be together openly. I wanted to be closer to her, to spend more time together, so I accepted the role. But it felt like swallowing knives, witnessing her and Zachary's sweet romance off camera. Scrolling through my phone, I saw another trending topic. Hashtag Winnifred Clarke protecting her love at wrap party hashtag. The comments were all urging them to get married. Of course, every few comments, there'd be one cursing and insulting me. They said someone like me who bullies others should die soon. An hour had passed, and Winnifred Clarke hadn't posted any clarification. Everyone involved stayed silent, letting the trending topics rise. I took out my phone and removed Winnifred Clarke from my blacklist. I acted on impulse. But things needed to be clarified. I typed out words I thought I'd never write. Winnifred Clarke, let's break up. Winnifred Clarke found me 3 hours later. Are you drunk? You actually blacklisted me? She came over and grabbed me. Don't touch me. I shook off her hand. Harold Jones, there's a limit to throwing a tantrum, she said sternly. What you did at the wrap party was wrong. I asked you to apologize. Was that wrong? A simple apology could have resolved everything, but you had to blow it up online. I chuckled. Did you suffer any loss? She was silent. Of course she didn't. This was great free publicity. The show was already getting buzz before airing. So even now, my trending topics were still up, with no one addressing them. How ridiculous. I was ridiculous. I staggered to my feet, pushing her away. Winnifred Clarke, I'm serious about breaking up. Stay as far away from me as possible. You're drunk. She frowned. I'm speaking from my heart. Winnifred Clarke looked at me for a while, sighed, and softened her tone. Honey, stop making a fuss. Let's go home. You go. Frank will come pick me up soon. But she didn't leave. Instead, she forcefully snuggled into my arms. Stop it, come home with me. I'll pretend I didn't hear you say break up. Don't ever say it again, understand? With that, she leaned in to kiss me. Honestly, I used to fall for this. Several times, we fought over Zachary Smith, and she'd always coax me this way. But this time, just thinking about her clinging to Zachary earlier made me sick. Winnifred Clarke. I pushed her away with effort, turning my head. Can't you understand human language? I want to break up with you. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the rooftop door. Frank was standing there, eyes wide. He must have just arrived. I pushed Winnifred Clarke away and grabbed Frank, walking off. Harold Jones. Winnifred Clarke's voice came from behind, tinged with the anger of losing face. Repeat what you just said. I took a deep breath, turned around, and looked at her, enunciating each word. I want to break up with you. Fine, very well. She laughed coldly. Break up, huh? I agree. Don't regret it. I stayed at Frank's place for a week, and Winnifred Clarke didn't contact me even once. On the weekend, the casting results for the movie I auditioned for last month came out. Frank looked at me, hesitating to speak. What is it? Didn't I get the part? I smiled, used to it by now. No, they said the male lead is still undecided. Currently, it's between you and Zachary Smith. The final decision will be based on the female lead's opinion. The female lead? It's Winnifred Clarke. Oh. Harold, Frank said hesitantly. You know, last time Winnifred Clarke made you give the male lead role to Zachary Smith. You are her real boyfriend, after all. She has a lot of influence in the industry now. Should we talk to her? Frank, I shook my head. Winnifred Clarke and I have already broken up. Frank's eyes widened. Really broken up? What else? Weren't you there at the time? I thought you were just having a fight. But Harold, Frank said worriedly, can you really let go? It's Winnifred Clarke we're talking about. Let go? Can I really let go? I had asked myself this question many times. Over 4 years of relationship, companionship, and effort, there were sweet moments. Even now, I still clearly remember the first sentence she cautiously said to me. How she stayed by my side for 3 days and nights without sleep when I was sick. And how she drove 1,000 kilometers just to see me from a distance on set. But even the most brilliant paintings fade over time. Why don't you go back and talk to her properly? Go back? I smiled. I am going back. But only to get my things. The apartment Winnifred Clarke and I shared, she rarely stayed there anymore. The paparazzi were too persistent, she was busy with work, and our free times rarely coincided. When I opened the apartment door, I didn't expect Winnifred Clarke to be there. She was wearing loungewear, clutching her phone, as if waiting for someone's message. She seemed startled by the sound of the door opening and only then came back to her senses. In an instant, her expression changed, and she looked at me with a sneer. Changed your mind? Finally willing to come back? I nodded. Yes, I've thought it through. I walked straight to the bedroom, opened the closet, and pondered what to take. Winnifred Clarke followed me. I'm not mad at you about this. Just don't be impulsive in the future. I've taken down the trending searches about you online. Just apologize to Zachary Smith publicly, and I'll give you the male lead role in the new movie. It's just a male lead role, she muttered softly. Is it worth all this fuss? I dragged out a suitcase and opened it. Do you have a job coming up? She was stunned for a moment. I terminated my contract. I didn't look up. What? Her voice rose. Such a big decision, and you didn't discuss it with me? I sighed. Why should I discuss it with you? I looked up. We broke up, Winnifred Clarke. Break up? She paused, then walked over and squatted beside me. Harold, have you had enough of this? Is it really such a big deal that it's worth dragging it out like this? Zachary Smith and I have been faking a relationship for publicity for 4 years now. You know that. Why are you so sensitive this time? I snapped the suitcase shut and looked up. Winnifred Clarke, do you know why I agreed to play the second male lead in that drama? She was stunned. Because I missed you. So even though the drama only gave me the role of a villain, I still took it. I just missed her, wanted to see her more. But when we were on set, you treated me like a stranger. She was stunned again. Just because of that? Zachary Smith and I have a contract to fake a relationship for publicity. You know that. Every few months, you bring this up to fight. Do you know how exhausting that is for me? Also, why should we kiss in front of others? Why do you insist on being intimate in public? Do you enjoy exposing our privacy? Harold Joan, can you consider my feelings before you impulsively get angry? I looked at her quietly. Winnifred Clarke, do you know that I was deliberately bullied on set? I had to film a water scene 20 times, and the next day, I had a fever so high I almost got pneumonia. She was stunned. You didn't know, did you? Because even though you had no scenes to film those days, you were out sightseeing and taking photos with Zachary Smith. I texted you saying I was sick, and you replied 5 hours later. Do you remember what you said? You said, drink more hot water, darling. When Winnifred Clarke sent that message, Frank had already taken my feverish self to the hospital. They said. She was in a daze. They said you left because you had something to do. I smiled bitterly and shook my head. Winnifred Clarke, I love you, so I'm willing to endure these things for you. But sometimes, just once, I hope that in moments like these, my girlfriend can be by my side. The rap party was just the last straw that broke the camel's back. What I wanted was actually very little. Even in a secluded corner, a soft word of comfort, a glance, a light kiss. But there was nothing, not even once. You say I have a temper, maybe I really do. I stood up the packed suitcase, ready to leave. She suddenly pressed down on my hand. Our 4-year relationship, arguing is one thing. But you can't just say break up so casually, do you know that? She stared into my eyes. I know. She looked at me in disbelief. Then you still want to break up with me? Is our relationship so casual, so worthless in your eyes? I shook my head, not wanting to argue with her anymore. Winnifred Clarke, we are not breaking up, we have already broken up. I pulled my hand away, took a few steps, thought for a moment, and still turned back. You know, I usually have a good temper, rarely argue with people. We had a relationship, let's end it peacefully. Since I won't be in this circle anymore. I won't write any exposés or post any photos to deliberately ruin you, these. I paused, consider them my parting gifts to you. She was stunned, then suddenly rushed over and grabbed me. Harold Joan, stop making a fuss. Where can you go if you leave me? Your career is here. After saying this, she turned her head away. If you really insist on leaving today, then there's no going back for us. Ding dong, just then, the doorbell rang. I turned to open the door and was stunned. Zachary Smith, who was outside the door, was also stunned when he saw me. He looked past me and greeted Winnifred Clarke, seemingly a bit embarrassed. Ah, it's just Winnifred. When I came over to borrow the bathroom the day before yesterday, I seem to have left a pair of underwear inside. The air was silent, and I suddenly laughed, turning my head. Is borrowing the bathroom also part of the contract? Winnifred Clarke was silent for a moment and then said in a low voice, friends help each other. It's just borrowing a bathroom. Do you have to be so sarcastic? If you really have no trust in me now, then we might as well really break up. Yes, let's break up. We were supposed to break up anyway. I lifted my foot to leave. And Winnifred Clarke was stunned for a moment, then immediately followed. The elevator had just arrived, and I walked in. Winnifred Clarke was about to enter the elevator too. But Zachary Smith suddenly pulled her back. Winnifred, you can't go down. There are paparazzi downstairs. You'll be photographed. And in that moment of her hesitation, the elevator door finally closed completely. I bought the nearest flight back to Seaview City. Frank came to see me off with red eyes. Harold, now that you won't be acting anymore, what are your plans back home? Winnifred Clarke had asked me the same question. No choice, I'll follow the arrangements at home. When I was young, I argued with my parents and sister, insisting on entering the entertainment industry. Saying I wanted to make a name for myself on my own. Now, after 4 years in the entertainment industry, I haven't even played a male lead, and I'm covered in scandals. In our profession, if you're not in the circle, it's really hard to find a job. Yeah, it's a headache. I sighed, I might just have to go back and inherit the family business. What? Frank was stunned. It was time to board, and I gave Frank a hug. If you ever come to Seaview City for fun, feel free to visit me at the Joan Group building. Joan Group? Frank muttered, the top domestic company in daily necessities, Joan Group? After saying this, he looked up at the giant Joan Group advertisement not far from the airport. So, you're Joan, and the Joan of Joan Group? Yes, it's the same Joan. The plane flew for 2 hours. Landing in Seaview City, the familiar sea breeze greeted me. When I got home, I found out that something had happened at home. My parents had been living abroad for a long time. And the family company had long been managed by my sister. Originally, my sister planned to keep it from me. But I noticed that many of the antique paintings and calligraphy at home and her many beloved cars in the garage were missing. Under my questioning, she finally told me that the company had recently encountered a financial crisis. Mom and Dad don't know yet, my sister said, pinching her brow, this time it's quite troublesome. We need to find a company to cooperate with as soon as possible. But now, maybe only the Lowe family can come up with enough money. But the amount is too large, and just signing an agreement might not be enough. I was silent for a moment. Of course, I knew what this meant. So, sis, do you need a marriage alliance? My sister sighed. I can. My sister was stunned for a moment and looked up. But you and that girl from the acting world broke up. My sister is much older than me and has always doted on me since I was a child. When I insisted on not staying in the company and instead went to the entertainment industry, it was also she who persuaded our parents. She had been carrying the company alone for so many years. And as the youngest son of the family, now that we were in trouble, of course, I had to step up no matter what. Then, go meet her? My sister hesitated. If you don't like her after meeting, we can refuse. There are other ways. I nodded, okay. Life seems to be so dramatic. Just 2 weeks ago, I broke up with Winnifred Clarke. And now I'm sitting in a high-end Western restaurant, having a blind date with Yvonne Lowe from the Lowe Group. 10 minutes later, Yvonne Lowe arrived. She wore a well-fitted custom-made dress, looking as dazzling as any celebrity. Sorry, I got held up. No worries, I just got here myself. She sat down. Can we start now? I nodded. Mr. Joan, you go ahead and ask first. I thought for a moment. Are you in good health? Other than sometimes getting dizzy from overworking, I'm fine. Oh, that's nothing, a common issue for female leads. What? Oh, it's just, I chuckled. You might not know, but in the modern romance scripts I've read, the female leads all have this problem. The doctor says it's from too much stress, she patiently explained. I'm an only child, so I have to take over the family business. There's no fixed working hours. Does the female lead have any other problems in the script? She suddenly asked. I thought for a moment. In the script, the female lead also has insomnia. That, I don't have, she considered. I sleep very well. Very honestly, and I don't hog the blanket. Oh, I don't hog it either, I replied without thinking. What am I saying? That's great then. She didn't seem to notice my slight embarrassment and just smiled. Do you have any other questions? I shook my head immediately. No, that's all. So, Mr. Joan, your requirements for a partner are just good health and no insomnia? She propped her chin with her hands and smiled playfully. Pretty much. She laughed again. Do you have any questions for me? I asked. She shook her head. No, I'm quite satisfied. I paused. Ms. Lowe, actually, you should know some things about me. I used to be in the entertainment industry, and I have some negative news. The trending searches about the rap party? She tilted her head. I know all about it. She looked up and smiled. Mr. Joan, you wouldn't think I'd come to meet you without doing some research, would you? Gathering all available information before doing business is a basic skill for a businessperson. Isn't it? She blinked. Winnifred Clarke, she's actually my ex-girlfriend. I wonder if that bothers you. I admitted honestly. If it's just that, it's merely a part of your past. I don't mind, and you shouldn't either. Besides, since she's an ex, it means it's over. She smiled, meeting new people and experiencing new things. Time will heal many things. I nodded, yes. Everything about Winnifred Clarke, good or bad, will be washed away by the river of time. As a grown man, it's overly sentimental to dwell on it. We chatted for a while longer. Yvonne Lowe was a smart and beautiful girl. The good thing about talking to someone like her was that no matter the topic, it felt comfortable. And so, the matter of my marriage to Yvonne Lowe was settled. We quickly started preparing for the wedding. The next time I got a call from Winnifred Clarke was on a weekend. What's up? After a moment, she finally spoke. There are still some of your things at my place. Throw them away. Harold. Her voice was urgent. This time it was my fault, okay? Mr. Joan, would you like to see the bride's wedding dress? The voice of the dress shop assistant interrupted. The other end of the line seemed to go silent. Are you filming? She asked. I paused. Winnifred Clarke, we've broken up. Where are you? Winnifred Clarke, I've gone home. I won't be acting anymore, and you shouldn't look for me. Home? You went back to Sea City? Why are you looking at wedding dresses there? For whom? A friend? I didn't answer. She paused, then said, the night you left, I went to film a variety show. I just finished and came back. Where in Sea City are you? I'll come find you. Winnifred Clarke. I interrupted her. I'm getting married. Before I hung up, she stayed silent. Throwing my phone into my bag, I rubbed my eyes. Hearing her voice stirred complex feelings in my heart. After all, I used to think I would love her forever. I never thought there would come a day when I'd tell her over the phone that I was getting married. Yvonne Lowe arrived half an hour later to get her wedding dress measurements. "You seem distracted," she observed. "Didn't sleep well?" I shook my head. "No, I was just trying to pick a wedding dress for you but didn't know which style you'd like. I think we should get to know each other better before the wedding." She nodded. "How do we do that?" "Tomorrow is the weekend." I thought, how about watching a movie? That night, I bought the movie tickets. On Saturday evening, Yvonne Lowe wore a cute little dress, adding a touch of youthful charm. It caught the eyes of passing young men. After the movie, we walked side by side on the street. Maybe for convenience, she wore canvas shoes. But after a few steps, her shoelaces came undone twice. When her shoelaces came undone for the third time, I couldn't stand it anymore and squatted down to tie them before she could. Yvonne Lowe froze in place, while I nimbly picked up her shoelace, looped it a few times, and tied a complex knot. All done, I stood up and smiled. "This should ensure it won't come undone again." She shook her foot and smiled, saying it was impressive and indeed very tight. "Harold." I looked up at the sound and was stunned. Not far away stood a familiar figure. Winnifred Clarke. Perhaps because I had spent so much time with her, even with a mask on, I could immediately tell that she didn't look well. She walked over in a few steps and stood in front of Yvonne Lowe and me. "This is?" Yvonne Lowe looked at me. "Winnifred Clarke, my ex-girlfriend I told you about." Yvonne Lowe was momentarily stunned. But she quickly smiled graciously and extended her hand. "Hello, Ms. Clarke, I am Yvonne Lowe, Harold Jones' fiancée." Winnifred Clarke's face turned even paler. In the cafe, Winnifred Clarke and I sat across from each other. A few minutes ago, the three of us had run into each other on the street. Winnifred Clarke insisted on talking to me alone, and after getting my consent, Yvonne Lowe returned to the car to wait for me. "I remember you were the best at tying knots," she suddenly said softly, but I could never learn. I remained silent. "Winnifred Clarke. In the past, you always tied my shoelaces when they came undone." She spoke softly again. "Yes, but that was in the past." Later, her shoelaces were not only tied by me but also by Zachary Smith. I hadn't tied her shoelaces in a long time. "Did you deliberately find someone to pretend to be your fiancé to deceive me?" she suddenly asked. I shook my head. "I am really getting married, Winnifred Clarke." "I don't believe it." She lifted her head, staring at me intently, as if trying to find traces of a lie on my face. I sighed. After a while, her expression revealed a slight panic. "Harold," she tightly grasped my hands on the table. "Zachary Smith and I are just a contract couple. I swear I never violated any principles behind your back." That day, he got soaked in the rain while filming. His home was far away, so I let him come up to take a shower. Nothing happened, really. I was angry that day and spoke without thinking, so I didn't explain to you. I really thought we were just having a fight. We used to fight too. You wanted to be the lead actor in that new show, right? I already talked to the director and got you the role. Harold, I've also thought it through. After this contract ends, I won't accept any more binding contracts. Let's go public, okay? In the future, we'll act together. You'll be my leading man, okay? Harold. Her eyes were slightly red. When we first got together, we said no matter what happened, we wouldn't break up easily. Yes, we did say that. I looked up, quietly observing the person in front of me. The person I once loved deeply, willing to compromise and sacrifice myself for her. But it was clearly her who let go first. She was just enjoying the thrill of ambiguity while relishing my loyalty. I slowly withdrew my hands. Winnifred Clarke, I'm getting married. I don't want my future wife to experience the pain I went through, so please. I looked her directly in the eyes. Don't come looking for me anymore. I've already left the entertainment industry. Acting was just a hobby for me. If I really wanted to be a leading man, my family could arrange countless roles for me. I just don't want that. Your family? She was stunned for a moment. It's not important anymore. I shook my head. I had originally planned to take her home to meet my family when we went public. I used to wonder if she would be surprised to find out I was the heir to the Joan Group. But now, it doesn't matter anymore. I loved you, so I still want to leave some dignity in this relationship for both of us. With that, I took out my phone and blocked her in front of her. Since no one ever knew about our relationship, let's just be strangers from now on. Back in the car, Yvonne Lowe was working on her laptop. Seeing me, she closed the laptop and turned around. I'm sorry. I apologized first, I didn't know she would find her way here. She remained silent for a moment, then lowered her head. Actually, it doesn't affect me personally, but for Low Group. She paused. Low Group has always been a low-profile company. My parents have always avoided having the company's name appear in gossip along with celebrities. I know, I nodded, I'll handle it properly. If it could be handled well, she wouldn't have come to Seaside City, right? She said softly. I was stunned for a moment. Why did it seem like she was a bit upset? Sometimes, what one person finds troublesome to handle, two people might solve more easily. She thought for a moment. We're about to get married, so why don't I help? How? The simplest way is for us to live together. She whispered. Huh? She sighed. Lila is on a business trip recently. If she comes to your house looking for you and you're alone, what will you do? Are you ready to have paparazzi take photos of us and make the news before we get married? Do you think she'd still come looking for you if she saw us living together? It seemed to make some sense. But wouldn't this be bad for you? She smiled. After all, we'll be living together after we get married anyway. Let's just consider this as getting used to it in advance. Yvonne Lowe was very efficient in her actions. The next day, she moved her things into my large apartment in the suburbs. As expected, Winnifred Clarke didn't come looking for me anymore. Living together meant we had breakfast and dinner together. And I got to know Yvonne Lowe a lot better. For example, she likes to drink black coffee for breakfast, doesn't eat cilantro, loves fish but isn't great at picking out the bones. For example, she works out for an hour every day, has great willpower, but also has a girlish side that likes to act cute. She would talk to me about work, career, and ask me what I wanted to do in the future. Actually, I've always wanted to start an entertainment company. I told her, to give more opportunities to newcomers like I was before. The apartment's decor was very simple. But it had a small bar where I had stored a lot of alcohol. I had previously learned bartending as a hobby, and after she moved in, I would mix a drink or two to pass the time. One day, as I was mixing a drink, she came back. What are you making? She walked over, looking very interested. I'm making a bomber. Should I make you a sweet cocktail instead? No, I'll drink yours. Ha? Mine? I still had some drink in my mouth and my mind went blank for a moment. Sure, but you have to use a glass. Of course, she smiled cutely. How else did Mr. Jones think we should drink it? A flush of heat rushed from my ears. I might as well bury myself in a hole with my glass. She took the glass from my hand and tilted her head. How about we go for a drive this weekend? The topic change was just in time. I nodded, sure. On Sunday, we went to the Lowe family's estate in the suburbs. On the way back, I got a call from Frank. He excitedly told me that I had been nominated for Best Supporting Actor at this year's Jones City International Film Festival. The Jones City International Film Festival is a very prestigious award in the industry. And winning it would be a great validation of professional ability. Harold, actually Winnifred has recruited me into her team now. Winnifred has been talking to me a lot lately, asking about your past. I really feel like she still has feelings for you. I told her everything you went through before. Really, she used to ignore so much, and every time I talked about it, I got so angry. Just thinking about it makes me mad. Every time Winnifred hears these things, she gets very silent. Oh, and lately Zachary Smith has been visiting her a lot, but he's left with a dark face twice. Frank chattered on the other end of the line. But I suddenly realized that the entertainment circle and life in Jones City seemed so far away now. It felt like I had moved on faster than I had imagined. Why was that? At a red light, I turned to look at the person beside me, lost in thought. Harold, after a moment, Yvonne Lowe suddenly spoke. If you keep staring at me like that, I'm going to get a little scared. In TV shows, when the male lead has something bad to say, he always stares at the other person for a long time first. Yvonne Lowe? Yes? I think you should watch less TV. She burst out laughing. I just love everything about you. As she spoke, she pointed ahead. It rained yesterday. Let's get the car washed. The car wash owner knew Yvonne Lowe and greeted her warmly as soon as we arrived. After some small talk, Yvonne Lowe sat in the lounge, pulled out her phone, and started handling some work. Suddenly, her eyebrows furrowed slightly. Harold, someone took a picture of us. I leaned over to look, and sure enough, There was a photo of us resting at the service area, with me standing by the car. The caption read, Harold Joan nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Having a great time with a rich woman. The words were filled with malice. I'll handle it. I stepped out and made a few calls. About 10 minutes later, I came back. It's all taken care of. It was likely bought by one of the other nominees. Yvonne Lowe was stunned. The other nominees? I nodded. Out of the 5 people nominated, I had no interaction with 3 of them. And the other one was Zachary Smith. Even though I had left the industry, he still seemed to be fixated on me. After the car was washed, the owner came over with a big smile. Are you Ms. Lowe's boyfriend? Yvonne Lowe smiled and introduced me. Yes, this is Lilla Joan's brother, Harold Joan. So, you're Mr. Joan, the owner suddenly realized and smiled. I visited Mr. Joan's newly built garage last month. Mr. Joan's collection of cars is truly impressive. I nodded and smiled. Wait a minute. Newly built garage? Yvonne Lowe and I returned to my house. As soon as we stepped into my villa, a cushion came flying straight at me. Harold. My sister jumped up. How did you trick Yvonne into living with you while I was away? Yvonne Lowe, sis, actually it wasn't Harold. Sis, I walked over, rubbing my forehead. Shouldn't you explain your situation first? Huh? Are we going bankrupt? My sister was stunned for a moment and then immediately looked at Yvonne Lowe. Stop looking, sis, Yvonne spread her hands and whispered. Mr. Zantop let it slip, he already knows. That Mr. Zantop. My sister was furious. So you didn't actually sell your car, but built a big garage and moved all your precious cars there? Yes. And what about Dad's antique calligraphy and paintings? We bought a new big house recently. And we plan to move there when Mom and Dad come back for the new year. We moved some of those things there first. My sister's voice grew smaller and smaller. What else? I clenched my fists. Let me explain. Yvonne Lowe walked over. I asked Lilla Joan to help me with this. My sister breathed a sigh of relief. You're such a good friend. But the idea of deceiving you into thinking we needed an arranged marriage to avoid bankruptcy was her idea. My sister. Harold, here's the thing, my sister hurriedly said. I did lie to you, but this was actually a result of a discussion between me, Yvonne, and our parents. Ever since we found out you were being treated unfairly in the entertainment industry, we've been really worried. I was taken aback. You knew? You've never cared about the entertainment industry. My sister raised her hand, sighed, and placed it on my head. Silly brother, I wasn't interested in that industry, but you're in it. How could I not pay attention? I read entertainment news 800 times a day. And her, my sister pointed at Yvonne Lowe. You might not know, but she's had a crush on you for many years. I turned to look at Yvonne. She liked you when you were in college, but back then, I thought Yvonne was too young, and you were too smart. I was afraid she'd get hurt, so I subtly interfered. My sister cleared her throat. But I didn't expect she would actually wait for so many years. Do you remember before you left home to break into the entertainment industry? Mom and Dad arranged a blind date for you, which you stubbornly refused to go to. My sister sighed. That blind date was with her. When you had trouble this time. Mom and Dad actually bought plane tickets to come back, but we knew your personality. You've always thought of yourself as a man and wanted to handle everything on your own. You'd definitely pretend nothing was wrong this time as well. But we're family. Family is your safest haven, isn't it? We're all very happy you came back this time. So we discussed and agreed to pretend we didn't know anything, giving you and Yvonne a chance to interact. It's also a way to give her many years of unrequited love a chance. As for those people, our family will deal with them eventually. Huh? I was stunned. What are you planning to do? What do you think I went on a business trip for? I've already bought that TV series, my sister sneered. Are you kidding? Bully my brother? That series won't air. I've also contacted the director who was fired before. The script still has market potential, and we'll get her to reshoot it. I stared at my sister, then looked at Yvonne Lowe, who was also frowning slightly. Sis, I think you're being too impulsive. You should consider the return on investment, I said. My sister immediately blew up. Revenge for you needs to consider the return on investment? At that moment, my phone beeped. I pressed it and saw a voice message. Mr. Joan, the acquisition of X Entertainment is almost finalized. If you have time, we're waiting for you at the office." My sister was stunned. "You acquired an entertainment company? What for?" "I've always wanted to start an entertainment company, haven't I?" This is the result of discussions with Yvonne over the past few days. I smiled. "Sis, your brother hasn't been wasting his time in the entertainment industry these years. If I get bullied without seeking revenge, would I still be worthy of being a Joan?" My sister, "Alright, wait, what?" She suddenly blew up again. "And you have the nerve to criticize me? You two bought a whole company." Yvonne Lowe burst into laughter. Next, the three of us discussed the company matters together. And Yvonne left for Lowe Group as she had something to attend to. "Harold, tell me honestly," after a long silence, my sister turned to me. "After all this time, do you have any feelings for Yvonne?" She squinted her eyes. "If you don't like her, don't waste your time. If it weren't for her insistence, I wouldn't have introduced her to you at this time. Especially since you just went through a breakup." Do I like her? The bits and pieces of these days replayed in my mind like frames in a movie. Actually, because of her, I had already moved on from my previous relationship. Sis, the contract with Lowe Group, even if the Joan family isn't going bankrupt. It's still quite important, right? Well, So, I smiled. Let's continue to sign it then. On the day of the Film Festival Awards, Yvonne Lowe accompanied me to Joan City. And we went to the venue together. On the way, she fell asleep, and I secretly slipped a ring onto her ring finger. When we arrived at the venue, a few acquaintances came over to chat. One of them looked at my custom suit and exclaimed, "Oh my, this seems to be Andrew's latest design this year. There's only one in the world, right?" Before I could respond, a haughty voice came from behind me. "Now that you've gotten yourself a sugar mommy, of course, you dress differently." Zachary Smith walked over, a bright smile on his face. "But no matter how well you dress a wild boar, it won't turn into a lion, right, Harold Joan?" People immediately gathered around. "Zachary, are you and Winnifred Clarke close to something good? This time, you're the hottest candidate for Best Supporting Actor." Zachary answered with a smile, while casting a provocative glance at me. Honestly, as a grown man, this seemed a bit childish. I figured I'd let it go for now, not wanting him to ruin my mood at the film festival. Soon, the awards ceremony began. Before the Best Supporting Actor was announced, the big screen showed the 5 nominees. Zachary maintained a calm and confident smile until the host announced, "Best Supporting Actor, Harold Joan." His composed expression crumbled instantly, caught perfectly by the big screen before it could switch away. To be honest, I was quite surprised too. Standing on the podium, I felt a bit dazed. The senior presenter smiled and shook my hand. He said, "Harold Joan, I've watched your performances. Although you've always played supporting roles, each one was very vivid. You did a great job." My eyes felt a bit moist as I accepted the trophy and gave my thank you speech. After 4 years of acting, even though I had decided to leave the entertainment industry, receiving this belated recognition still made me quite happy. So, if you have talent, you'll always be noticed, right? After that, the awards continued. Everything went smoothly until Winnifred Clarke, last year's Best Actress, came on stage to present the Best Actress award. The host asked her how she felt this year compared to last year. She paused for a moment. "Last year. I actually forgot to thank someone." "Oh? Who is that?" The host smiled. She hesitated. "He accompanied me for a long time, from being an unknown extra to where I am now. But I've never properly introduced him to everyone." The audience immediately made understanding noises, and the big screen quickly cut to Zachary, with hearts popping up on the screen thanks to the backstage team. I really want to take this opportunity to say congratulations to him. Huh? Why congratulations? Is it because something good is happening between you two? Because he won an award today too. The host's eyes widened, and the prepared lines seemed to get stuck in his throat. After a moment, he stammered, "Is that so? Then, let's congratulate him together." Zachary's face stiffened again. This time it was on the full screen, even more obvious than before. Many in the audience started whispering, and quite a few people cast curious glances at me. After all, among the male winners today, the Best Actor, Best Animated Film Director, etc., were all in their 50s. Apart from them, the only one fitting Winnifred's description was me. After the awards ceremony ended, I deliberately stayed a bit longer. but still ran into Winnifred Clarke at the garage entrance. "Harold." Her voice was hoarse. I paused, then stepped forward. "Winnifred Clarke, you didn't have to do that." She shook her head. "I owe you an apology." I sighed. "An amicable breakup was the last dignity I gave us. If you remain stuck in the past, it's just entanglement. But I can't move on." Her eyes reddened as she looked at me. "Harold, I really can't move on. Can you give me another chance?" "Harold." I turned around to see Yvonne Lowe holding a men's coat, running over. She was both lively and adorable. "Aren't you cold?" She took my hand as she approached. "It's fine." "Have you been waiting long? Are you tired?" "I'm not tired." "Put on the coat first." She kindly draped the coat over me, then took my arm and turned to look at the stiff-faced Winnifred Clarke. "Miss Clarke, what a coincidence, meeting you again." She smiled slightly, seemingly with a hint of apology. "Sorry, but we have a celebration party at home for Harold. So we won't be catching up with you here." Back in the car, I opened my phone. Sure enough, Winnifred Clarke's speech had pushed my name to the top of the trending searches again. Hashtag Winnifred Clarke Harold Jones secret couple hashtag. Hashtag Winnifred Clarke and Zachary Smith just for show hashtag. Hashtag did Harold Jones win because he off Winnifred Clarke hashtag. Meanwhile, the video of Zachary Smith's post-ceremony interview quickly surpassed 10 million views. "This society is inherently unfair, and I'm used to it," he shook his head. "But no matter what unfair treatment I face, I will stay true to myself and bring more good works to everyone. I don't want to say much about relationships," he said with a bitter smile. "I have a clear conscience." As I kept scrolling, I saw a rapidly rising topic. Hashtag Low Group hashtag. I clicked on it and found that the official Low Group account had posted a message 10 minutes ago. "Congratulations to Mr. Harold Jones on his double happiness. Sneak peek of Mr. Harold Jones and Ms. Yvonne Lowe's engagement party setup." The pictures were of the decorations at our engagement party venue. I turned to look at the person next to me, who was stifling a laugh. "Isn't your Low Group a low-profile company?" The woman remained unfazed. "I finally got married, everyone was happy. But we only posted a simple message on the official blog." "Isn't that low-key?" "That wasn't all." As I scrolled further, my sister, not to be outdone, also posted a message. "Our Jones family's young master is the best." Thanks to her, the Jones group also made it to the trending topics. Yvonne. At the traffic light, I stopped the car and turned to look at Yvonne Lowe. "I'll be handling some matters tonight." She nodded. "Do you need my help?" I shook my head. "No, I can handle it myself." I made a few phone calls. An hour later, the original director of the previous TV series posted a long article detailing the casting controversies and the truth behind her being fired. She also shared the casting videos and the original cast list. After that, a video of me being maliciously targeted by the crew was also released. I was once willing to let things go for the sake of everyone's dignity, a value instilled in me since childhood. But that didn't mean I would tolerate others taking advantage of that. Some people never realize their mistakes unless they face consequences. Soon, people who had been bullied by Zachary Smith and other crews but dared not speak out also started posting videos and various pieces of evidence. Winnifred Clarke's name frequently appeared in the trending topics. The reason many people kept silent about Zachary Smith's bullying was largely due to their fear of Winnifred Clarke. From fan to hater, Winnifred Clarke is disgusting. I want to slap Winnifred Clarke twice and ask her what she was thinking. Why not focus on maintaining relationships and acting? Winnifred Clarke and Zachary Smith are a perfect match. Looking back at the rap party video, Winnifred Clarke and Zachary Smith were really disgusting. Harold Jones must have felt so uncomfortable that day. I owe Harold an apology. Me too, I also owe him. The online discussions were non-stop. Even the film festival committee issued a statement. The entire selection process was completely fair, just, and transparent. Regarding certain actors insinuating that there were hidden agendas in the committee's awards, we will seriously consider using legal means to protect our reputation. Later, netizens began to express both excitement and complaints. There are too many scandals to keep up with. I don't even want to sleep at night. If Zachary Smith put the effort he uses in interviews and fake romances into acting, he might win a Grand Slam, haha. He even insinuated that Harold Jones' awards were rigged. The Jones family's young master, with an heiress fiancée from the Lowe family, acts just for fun. If there were any rigging, he would have been blacklisted to Africa, not bouncing around here. Here's a knowledge post explaining how powerful the Jones Group and Lowe Group are. After all the gossip, the class representative summarizes. Zachary Smith and Winnifred Clarke aren't even worthy to carry Harold Jones' shoes. After arriving at the house in Jones City, Yvonne Lowe stopped the car and opened her phone. "It's so lively," she said softly. "Yes, it is," I replied. "I don't bully others, but I'm no saint either. I just reveal the truth to the public. Right and wrong, people can see clearly. Water can carry a boat, but it can also overturn it." Yvonne Lowe chuckled softly and unbuckled her seatbelt, turning towards me. "Mr. Jones." Her eyes seemed to hold 1,000 stars. "Congratulations on winning the award, well deserved." That night, I slept early and slept well. Because the next day, I had to go to X Entertainment. At 9 o'clock, I arrived at the company with my assistant. From a distance, I could hear Zachary Smith throwing a tantrum. "I've contributed so much to the company. Most of you at X Entertainment rely on me for your livelihood. Now that there's trouble, you ignore me. Do you have any conscience?" Someone muttered softly, "Isn't it because you said nonsense in the interview?" "What did you say?" Zachary Smith shouted, "I want to see the boss." "Where is he? Why hasn't he been here for days?" I walked into the company. "What did you say? What do you mean by a change of boss? Explain yourself." The chief assistant trying to calm Zachary Smith saw me and immediately fell silent, running over. "Mr. Jones, hello, you have arrived." I nodded. "Why is it so chaotic this early in the morning?" The chief assistant wiped his sweat. "It's nothing serious, we'll resolve it immediately." I looked up, meeting Zachary Smith's pale face and incredulous gaze. "The office is all cleaned up, would you like to take a look?" The chief assistant smiled. I nodded. As I passed Zachary Smith, I paused. "I think I heard you wanted to see me?" He bit his lip. "No. Don't worry," I smiled, "I'll talk to every employee. Your turn will come." After reviewing X Entertainment's internal materials, I realized how much money the company had spent on Zachary Smith. Many talented new actors had been suppressed by Zachary Smith for years, unable to get the resources they deserved. I carried out extensive reforms within the company and recruited many new talents for training. Initially, Zachary Smith was defiant, so I threw a stack of photos in front of him. "I reviewed your file. The company spent a lot of money to cover up the photos of you partying with internet celebrities and small-time models. If you want to terminate your contract, according to the agreement, you need to compensate the company for those expenses and the losses from endorsements first." In the end, he lost the company's money and left in disgrace. Winnifred Clarke hadn't been to the company for a long time. But she didn't have any new work now, and her contract with the company was about to expire. Her fan club announced its dissolution, and many directors were wary of black fans. So they didn't dare to cast her in new films. Until one day, Frank suddenly called, his tone anxious. "Harold, Winnifred fell from upstairs and broke a bone. She doesn't want to see anyone, only you. Harold, I think she's not in a good state. Can you come see her?" That day, Yvonne Lowe happened to come to Jones City, and we were handling the relocation of the X headquarters to see City together. "I'll go with you," she said. "Do we really need to go?" I actually didn't want to see Winnifred Clarke. People often say not to chase a desperate enemy. She hummed, "But we still need to let her give up on my husband." In the hospital, Winnifred Clarke lay sickly on the bed, her leg in a cast. I took a script out of my bag. "There's a low-budget web drama that needs a second female lead. The crew thinks you're suitable. You can audition once you recover." "Harold," she looked up, pain evident in her eyes. "Is there nothing else you can talk to me about besides work?" My gaze fell on her injured leg. I sighed. Ugh. Turning around, I saw Yvonne Lowe suddenly rubbing her forehead, her brows furrowed. "What's wrong?" I quickly went over. "Suddenly got a headache." "Did you sleep too little last night?" I asked worriedly. "It's my fault for not being considerate." "Ugh. My fault. Does it hurt here?" "Yeah, it hurts." "Should we see a doctor?" "It hurts. Mr. Jones." I was stunned for a moment and turned around to see Winnifred Clarke looking at me. Her face pale. Even paler than before. "I'll consider the script." "Oh, all right then. Get some rest." I nodded, turned, and let Yvonne Lowe out. We still needed to find a doctor to check on her for peace of mind. "Mr. Joan." Winnifred Clarke suddenly called me again. I turned back. "My contract is about to expire. This time, there's no way to renew it, is there?" I shook my head. "You should let it go." She was silent for a moment, then smiled bitterly. "I just wanted to try again. But I didn't expect that I had already lost." Later, Winnifred Clarke went abroad and never contacted me again, disappearing from the domestic film industry. I moved the ex-entertainment headquarters to Sea City and ended the long-distance relationship with Yvonne Lowe. The drama my sister bought, I picked 2 promising new actors with the director to star in it. And it became a huge hit online. The company was doing well. I followed my own ideas, promoting new talents and giving opportunities to those who truly loved acting. At the same time, I took over part of the family business, relieving my sister of a lot of burdens. One day, when I came home from work, Yvonne Lowe was making cocktails at home. She was a quick learner. After just a few lessons from me, she could make delicious drinks. "Want a drink?" she asked with a smile. "Yeah, you made this one." I nodded, putting down the script. "Is this the script the company is taking on?" she asked. "Yeah, it's a romance." "Romance, huh?" she asked. "Does it have a second female lead?" "Yes," I walked over. The female lead lets down the male lead, then the second female lead appears. This second female lead is quirky and very likable. Looking up, I met her playful gaze. "So, Mr. Joan, do you like your second female lead a little bit?" She tilted her head and asked. The warm light from the dining room cast on her, making my heart soften. I lifted her onto the dining table. "You know what? You're not the first female lead, you should be called the late female lead." She raised an eyebrow. "How do you know everything?" "I have shares in the entertainment company, of course. I look at the audience comments for every drama. Besides, I learn things quickly," she said proudly. "So, do you like your male lead?" Her face turned red, and she mumbled softly. "I've answered that day and night countless times since we got married, and you still ask." I smiled, leaned in to kiss her, but she turned her head away. "Don't you want to drink?" she said. I nodded. She handed me the blue cocktail she made, took a sip from her pink one, then suddenly hugged my neck and kissed me. The blue curacao and cherry brandy blended together, just like the name of the drink. Heart to heart, deeply in love.